So I'm recording now.
All right, here we go. How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? Well, you get a meteorologist and a biologist together. They're going to use the scientific method, and that will make you a smarter fantasy football player. And joining me as he does each and every week and twice a week during the regular season. He is the fantasy professor. He's a real professor. It's John, at least for a little while longer. Well, I guess you're always a real professor
I
going
will
forward.
be a real professor. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
John Bush.
Yeah.
Oh, John, welcome to the show. But
30
I'm
years as a professor, Dennis, I assure
you
you,
always
I will be applying as emeritus at the university.
so
So,
so so
you know,
that in the
yeah,
teaching biz, in the
yeah,
professorial world, if it's such a word that I'll at least one I'll make up.
professorial, yeah, or
So
something
it's
like
so it's
that.
kind of like being a Marine. You're never an
Eh,
ex-Marine.
No, no,
You're
no,
never a former Marine.
no,
You're always a
no.
Marine for life. So you're
Yeah,
always a professor for life.
yeah, and just as I tell students, a PhD, the piece of paper they give you is just to validate to the rest of the world what you already were. I mean, as a kid, I was the weird kid that would, when my dad, okay, let's clean these fish. We actually went fishing. I don't, some people may not fish, but growing up, and I'd start dissecting it. Well, what's in the stomach? What is this? And I'd clean, I'd have one clean and he'd have 20 and he'd look at me and get a little cranky. But I was, what is this? What kind of bug is this? There was just these questions I had about nature. I mean, as a biologist, that's usually how we start. What kind of bird is that? Or why is this? Why is this fish over here? Why is this bird over there? And why do these ants do this? Why are they here? What's this mushroom? You just have these questions about nature, the phenomenon you see around you. So a PhD again was just a piece of paper to show what I already was as a weird little science nerd kid. That was me. So I'm kind of like this icon, Dennis, that we had AI draw of you, some crazy weather guy. Look, you've had about 3 Red Bulls there, and you're thinking, is it 1 inch of rain or two? I don't know. And you're just sitting there frozen. Which way to go? Look at all the metrics in the background. Like I said,
Oh yeah.
if you'll look, folks, in the back, there's KC, and it probably says win percentage because Dennis is such a Kansas City homer there. They can never lose. And there it is in the background. I
I have
captured
a
it.
I have a red
AI
tie.
knew, Dennis.
I have a
AI
red
knew.
tie. Red
Yeah.
tie too.
And
I
look at
mean,
those graphs and charts, and they knew. And the Kansas City three-peat is in there somewhere in that data.
pretty accurate, pretty accurate. And that's the thing is people ask me too, how did you get into meteorology? Why science? And I've always been a science nut and nerd myself. I almost went into chemistry as my background. But there was I was just fascinated by the weather, and that's why I wanted to learn that. I never knew you could make a career out of it the way I did, but it's applied use of data
Yes,
is
that's the
is
hallmark of all that. Yeah.
that and that was from the earliest age of playing with baseball stats and trying to predict the future for my Cubs, which was usually the difference between are they going to win 60 or 70 games this year.
Yeah. As a Saints fan, I understand about predicting the future. We always see people don't understand. Everybody's, well, they won the first 2 games, and it's just like, no, my season's done. I'll take those 2 wins, and I'm happy. Dennis, I mean, if they can win another game or two, that's it. That's all I can expect. And that's why we're in the broom closet at the Hall of Fame. The Saints, we
It,
have the
and
Aints broom closet.
it's tough being a Chiefs fan because
Oh, come on, Dennis.
you have, you go into every game expecting to win. You
I
wouldn't
would
know what
hate
to
to be
do
on
with
that
yourself.
perch.
The
Yeah.
game went to overtime this Monday
Think
night. It
about it. It
was
could have been just down to a coin flip. If Baker
should have
would have got the
actually
flip,
been.
yeah,
Oh, they
it could have
the
been
the most idiot,
7-1. It
the
could have
idiot,
been.
most most idiotic decision of the week, or of the year in fantasy football is not going for the 2-point conversion to win. Okay. In football this year, in college football, my Purdue Boilermakers, who have been the doormats for everybody this year, they're 1-7, I believe. They've been horrible. They're giving up over 45 points a game. They somehow managed to take the Illini to overtime. The Illini scored, kicked the extra point. Purdue had the ball. They scored. They went for two. If you are the underdog, if you are facing a much better team, you're better to put your money on one roll of the dice, one lucky play. Purdue didn't get it, but I fully supported that idea of going for two because they were not the better team. They weren't even close to being the better team. And Tampa Bay, the only time they shut the Chiefs down was at the end of the halves
Yeah.
when they basically were running out of time and they had to throw all the time. You give them fresh set of downs with no worries about the clock, and they're going to run that ball. They're going to throw it. They're moving down the field. They are going to score on you. Why not go for two? I just don't understand it. But Professor, I'm kind of melancholy
Uh-oh.
today. Little
Uh-oh.
little melancholy
Okay.
be- because of the results of something that happened last night.
Uh-oh. What happened last
And
night?
so, big data guy, okay,
Yep.
studied the data on this event, thought I was prepared for any possible outcome, any any possible outcome. I didn't think I would wake up surprised today. Went to bed feeling good, thinking that I had this well analyzed. Thought I knew what the outcome was going to be. And this changes my outlook for the whole rest of the year.
Okay.
Okay. Just it I don't know how I can take what happened last night and even go on and enjoy life as much as I did because I totally missed this forecast.
Yeah.
I'm I'm beside myself because I didn't see this outcome as even a possibility.
Okay.
But this morning I wake up and I see the results.
Yeah.
And and when I only sort of, half-ass the research of numbers, nothing surprises me the next day.
Yeah.
But I analyzed this right down to every single possible thing that could happen. And people bid too much money in Fab on Gasecki. I didn't get any shares of Gasecki
What?
in on waivers. Not a single Gasecki share. And he was available in my leagues. But they were all bidding so much higher than I did. I didn't see that coming, Professor. I know they're chasing points from last week,
Yeah.
but now this outcome from last night.
Yeah.
You didn't think I was talking about waivers, did you?
I thought you were talking about waivers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know
See,
me.
that's how I'm
You know
thinking.
me. You know me
In other words,
quite well.
yeah, I do know you. We're fantasy
Yeah.
football. The real world doesn't affect me. We're in our own little universe of a fan. Dennis, we will come out of our world. But we don't go into hibernation like a lot of our
No.
experts.
No.
In fact, I just sent you something on text. Oh yeah, it was
Oh yeah, another
that
study.
that metric. Yeah, it was a decision metrics that I found. Uh, it is it's for investors in the stock market. And I just said, we could do this for your consistency metrics or some of my metrics and try to streamline to help our readers down the road. So when I see something like that, and it's called, and I don't know it's called the GE McKinsey 9 box metric. And what you do for investing is you look at the attractiveness of the stock industry, I guess energy or material goods or Bitcoin, whatever. And then that's on the y-axis, and the x-axis is strength of the business unit. And so if you look, each little box, if it's low and high, then you have certain decision. It's a decision tree, but it's in a metrics form, Dennis. And so I started thinking that might be in some ways to help people, because instead of chasing last week's points, this is a little higher up. It's looking at maybe at the team level or your team level, something beyond just looking at last week's points and chasing. And, we spend all our money last week on the hot thing and it's a big flop this week. And that's what I've seen. And it's not new. This has been going on for years. That's what's funny. When I look back at some of my metrics off season, Dennis, I look from the year 2000 to now, and I
Yeah.
look at the behavior of the different positions. And the tight end is one. And we are not actually, there was a time comparatively when tight ends had a lot more prominent role
Oh,
than
yeah.
we see now. We're not in the I called it in my videos the golden age of tight ends. It's not now. And just like bell cows, in some ways that was the golden age of the bell cow running back. Not now. We've left those worlds and maybe never to return. And it's such, it's rare as hen's teeth to have a King Henry that gets everything. I mean, how rare that's why he stands out even more in our memory
Oh,
versus
yeah.
if we looked 20 years ago, Henry would have been good, but he would have had other replicants, that were doing the same thing. Teams were doing the same thing. And it wouldn't have been as dramatic as it is now. That
Oh,
he's a unicorn now because this is not how we do things anymore. And so that's interesting. And my dog is even interested. Hey, beat my dog.
and there is such a gap right now between Derrick Henry using my consensus weekly values and the rest of the field. So
Yes.
he has a 4 point edge on second place. 5 points is a complete tier. Okay. Then to third place, he's got a 10 point edge right now. So that's 2 tiers between the top and the third place guy. If you're looking at it, logically. And here's the thing, that whole idea of a decision tree,
Yeah.
without having it as well defined as it did in that graphic you showed me,
Yeah.
that was our 6 metric
Test that we did.
test. It,
And
it,
we'll look
it
at
really
that.
was.
Yeah.
And we didn't know how to weight them. So we
I still
didn't.
don't know
I
the
don't know either.
results. I
I
haven't
don't know
had
either.
time because
No.
I got 41 teams I don't have time that's the off season to figure
But how
out which one.
but how about this, Professor?
Yeah.
If you look at those metrics,
Yeah.
okay, 3 quarterbacks stood out really. Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love. And Love being the cheapest, that's who we loaded up on a
Yeah,
lot
we
of
did.
teams. Okay. And if you look at the RBs, we
Oh,
love
yeah.
Derrick Henry.
Oh, we did.
Our data loved Barkley, but because of the way the draft went, we were
Yeah.
usually taking either
Well,
Henry or
Henry was
Barkley.
such a bargain. Like I said, our draft night team on the turn, It
Oh
was
yeah.
just, we had to, it gets a lot of yucks from everybody. We're reaching that deep to Henry. I think the
Yes.
yuck's on them. We did take Kelsey, but are we sad now?
No.
No,
No.
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 So that double it. And I have so much Kelsey Mahomes shares. Uh, if you ask me week two, I would be sad. Yeah, I would. Boy, I'm sad, but it worked out, and
Well,
I'm
open.
hoping we can. And so maybe we're in the high times, but if we can just hit a nice median for both those guys, I think the rest of it will take care of itself. That's the consistency, folks. I think that's what rewards you is it helps you on the highs and lows, but you can't go crazy. You can't
No.
get
No.
rid of Kelsey. Well, he's washed up. We're out of here week two, right? Everybody went nuts over Likely. I remember then Andrews was back in. Now he's back out, Dennis. And so, I couldn't, I would have a hard time in Dynasty because, I'm human nature. We're all subjective. I mean, you sit there and you keep getting, slapped in the face with a fly swatter. Eventually, it's like, you tease your dog and they just finally go ape shit nuts and start biting at the air. And that's kind of how I think some of the people start reacting when things are not going right. They just start snapping at the air at anything that they can see. Well, I can't do anything. Let me go chew on the furniture. I've got to release this energy here. And folks, it's the hardest fantasy football. A lot of it is about it's almost Eastern philosophy, right? It's the art of war. It's knowing yourself is the biggest challenge. And I can't tell y'all enough that I find myself still thinking about wisdom from 2,000 years ago. I love the
Oh
art of
yeah.
war, Dennis.
Yes.
Sun Tzu, and I
Sun
love
Tzu.
that. And
Yes.
yeah, and just thinking about those things that don't change. And maybe we should do that. I've always thought, how can we take some of those maxims that Marcus Aurelius did in Rome or Sun Tzu or some of these great philosophers that understood the humans? It hasn't changed. We're humans 2000. It's just the environment's different, but how we perceive it and do, we're still 10,000 years ago and the weeds are moving. And we either up in the tree or we're sticking our head in the saber-toothed cat's mouth, and like I said, our ancestors were up the tree. The ones that didn't survive, they got eaten by the saber-tooth. And in the fantasy, there's a lot like that, Dennis. If you go crazy and you get rid of Likely, then I bid him all back, I pay all my money to get him back, and I'm over here and I'm over there. You're not going to win. You just won't. Maybe by luck. And the worst thing is if luck rescues you with your bad decisions, the next year you think, well, I need to act like a fool again and I'll somehow win. And you're tricked and fooled. Maybe boy, I had that $100 team and I was crazy and still won. I'll bet $500 this year on a big $500 team. And then you blow up and you're looking around. How did this happen? And there's a lot of personal things. And that's why I do a lot of reading as a professor about the human nature and philosophy a little bit. I know I'm a scientist, but you have to understand yourself and you have to think about that. And I think our consistency metrics and things that we do our off season and using the power of the science and asking questions and letting the data guide us versus being led around by whatever we see on Twitter. That's what we are striving to separate ourselves. And that's why we probably will never, I know, Dennis, will never be on ESPN. And it's sad because we don't appeal to the masses. And it's just too bad.
No.
And that's just the way it's going to be. And it's sad. Oh, I wish, yeah, I would love to get paid to do this full time. But I would make people mad because I would be doing things. Well, last week you missed this one. Yeah. Consistency means that if you're betting red or black on the roulette wheel, you can have 10 reds in a row. It can happen. It doesn't mean the 11th spin is, all of a sudden going to be red. It's due, or it's going to be black because it's due. That due, you flip the coin. As long as it's a fair game, heads are 50%. And in fantasy, you're going to get tricked. And Dennis, you're going to let your emotions go. And we're moving into the playoffs, and people are going to lose because they're going to get extra crazy during the playoffs. It's
Oh
coming. I
yeah,
don't know when or
yeah.
where, but they're going to make some mistakes, and they're going to, I need to go do this because somehow I've lucked my way into the playoffs and I better go do this. And versus they've got some consistent players, and maybe they're, it's just the way it is. The strength of schedule's been a little sad the last couple of weeks, and they want to get rid of some of these good players that are more consistent than some of these spiky players, and they're going to pay the price. It's coming. I don't know how, folks. I don't know where. Lightning's going to strike somewhere, and it might strike you. So it's best to listen and be consistent versus go ape crazy. Okay.
And
That was
here's the
my
thing,
rant, Dennis.
Professor. That's a great rant, actually, because it feeds into one other thing that I want to talk about is you got to look at the data in the right way. And I'm not going to go on and on about the election results, folks. This is a fantasy football show. But if you look at the polling data, it's the way people look at year-end points in fantasy football is how they also looked at the polling data. They just looked at the number for a simple answer. The polling that was done in the election, it was actually very good if you drill down into the data. Similarly, in fantasy football, everybody a couple weeks ago were ready to write off Patrick Mahomes, right? He's droppable, and you can pick up Jameis Winston for the rest of the season to replace him. I was told this on fantasy football Twitter by some smart people. Here's why I didn't buy it. First 3 weeks of the season, when he had a legitimate wide receiver one in Rashee Rice, he was over what I said is my historic median threshold number 2 out of 3 of those games. And the other was 2 points below it. That's not great, but it's not going to kill you in fantasy football. If you're that close to 20 points using a 6-point touchdown for passing, like I do in many of my leagues, that's why I calculate it that way. If you look at those numbers, that's not going to kill you in fantasy football. It's not going to win you anything, but it's going to keep you in the matchup. You're not giving up that many points to the rest of the quarterbacks. So this week, after being without a WR1, all of a sudden, DeAndre Hopkins is ready to play what is a full set of snaps for him. And actually probably will play more snaps going forward than he did on Monday night. And Mahomes had his best game of the season. And if you look at his combined MVP index now, for those 4 games where he had a legitimate WR1, that's only 4 data points. So it's not something to get too excited about. But when you add that to his back class of when he's had a legit WR1, his MVP index combined in those 4 games this year is 100.
Which is nice. You'll take that all day.
Only 5 other quarterbacks currently have a 100 rating, and Russell Wilson's got it based on 2 games only. So we don't know what he's going to be going forward. The other 4, Jalen Hurts at 100 even, Josh Allen at 100 even, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Mayfield at 156 or 155.6. Yeah. Those are the only other 5 guys in addition to Mahomes. And people were telling me he was droppable 2 weeks ago. So this is how you got to look at fantasy football data different. And if you look at our consensus of our six things, we had Derrick Henry, Barkley, Mixon, Kamara, Gibbs. Those were our guys. And then Brian Robinson farther in the draft. Guys like Chase Brown,
Yeah. And
who in
Dennis,
a
I'm looking at my ownership, and uh, because I handcuffed Kamara, I,
oh yeah.
Jamal Williams, I have in half 41, 21 out of 41. But next is Connor, Stevens, Henry, all
Yeah.
35 or 40%. Moster, Algier, Kamara. That's my top seven right there. And two of those, Moster and Williams, are backups. Four, I thought I could collect on Ashan if he was
Yep.
gone, or if
Yep.
Kamara and Algier. In case Bijan down, folks, I've got him in 10 leagues just ready to walk in and collect. So in the playoffs, if something happens, boy, do in other words, chaos favors me if
Oh yeah.
Kamara, if
Yep.
they if the Saints, okay, we're not going to do anything. Let's shut Alvin down. Jamal's going to have a role. If Bijan gets hurt, Algier's going to have a role. So I am ready. And my eighth one, I have Eckler and Garando
Oh yeah.
sitting there ready as
Yep.
well. And Emil Wilson and Green Bay, Tyrone Tracy. I'm just ready. Barkley and Mixon. So those are my like top 15. So I have some real strong upside if chaos visits the league, which imagine injuries could happen to running backs. I'm
Yes.
prepared. And that's another thing I think we have done well this year is you especially had tipped me on to people like Gorendo, I guess, from San Francisco and
Yep.
whatnot. And I've enjoyed that. And it's just a good feeling coming into the playoffs, knowing that, a fourth of my leagues, out of 40 that I can stand to increase. Chaos increases my team strength, right? That's the whole uh, zero RB idea. But Dennis and I did it through his better than zero method. In other words, it's a different methodology to get to the same place. And it's probably, I want to say, Dennis, the genius of it, and I know it's my first time to call you a genius, but when I thought about it, and I've had 2 years to think about it, it really it is a great whole card to have. But you know what? I think we're going to make it even better, and I'm not sure
Oh
quite
yeah.
how,
Yeah.
but it's going to improve. We're not going to go backward. I don't
No,
think with our research and using the scientific method, we're going to get worse. I think it's going to get better. Just like my dog, he's going to get better.
yeah, and here's the thing, Professor. The whole genius, if you want to use that word, go right ahead. But the whole reason this works is because you cherry pick the safe RBs at the top of the class. Okay. And that included Pacheco this year. So we got hurt by injury. But you have so many of them on your roster. And after a certain point in the draft, and we don't even understand where exactly that is yet, but at a certain point in the draft, you embrace that chaos because you've got a couple of anchor running backs. We had James Conner Swift as our RB2, Stevenson as an RB2. You know, our guys at the top end. I mean, how about a team, Professor, our draft night out team, where our running backs right now are Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, James Conner, Chase Brown. Not a bad foursome if you will, when it comes to surviving the rest of the season. And I know that Cincinnati picked up Khalil Herbert. They did so to replace Zach Moss, not to replace Chase Brown. Maybe it takes the top end off of Chase's stats, but he's an RB3 for you anyway on a very productive team. I like his chances of being fantasy football viable the rest of the year. But that's why this works. It was researched to work. And yes, some of the teams where I've had a few more injuries at wide receiver this year, I've been hurt because I'm leaner in my wide receivers. I might have only 4 or 5, and then 9 running backs in a typical FPPC lineup or roster. I can weather the injuries at running back better than I can weather the injuries at wide receiver, but I've picked up guys like Westbrook-Ikhine from Tennessee. You know, these are guys.
Dennis, it's getting lean.
It's getting lean, but at least he's been productive. He's got touchdowns in 3 straight games.
Dennis, waivers run tonight, but yeah, he's in my top 3 because it's that lean.
Oh yeah.
But the people I'm getting rid of, I just, they were just, in Tampa Bay, I wasn't sure who was going to do what. I couldn't imagine Otten doing as good as they're. And so I invested some of the depth there, and I'm moving on. I'm going to Ikhine is one. There's some others out there I'm looking at.
Sterling Shepard didn't hurt you last week.
No, but I was deeper still. I like Ray McCloud is one of my others.
Yep.
Because Drake London, if he doesn't make it, Ray will be he'll get you 10, 12 points this week.
Yeah.
He's worth it. And I think Ikhine could get you 10 or 12. So folks, I'm not looking for 24. I'm just trying to hit median on some of my WR4s this week. It's a lean week. Yeah.
We hit on Xavier Legette with Carolina. And when I say hit, the guy's actually contributed. It's not like he's been fabulous. He's my 56th ranked wide receiver right now.
Right.
But if you're dealing with injuries, hey, Waddle's at 52 right now, and you had to draft him real high to get him. So
and Dennis, my number 1 owned wide receiver in my 41 teams, 25 of them, 61%. Cedric Tillman.
Yeah.
Dennis, I went from almost 0 in the last 3 weeks, folks. I have acquired 25 out of 41. And you're like, how'd you do that? I must have blown all my money. No, Dennis.
Nope. You got him a week early.
2 weeks early.
2 weeks early,
I was just like, Lockett is there, and he's been hit or miss, but I wasn't a fool about Lockett. I know what Lockett can be. He's spiky, but I need that. Deebo Samuel, number 3, Jaden Reed, number 4, Wan'Dale Robinson, and the Giants is another spy. He reminds me a lot of Lockett. And then, of course, Sun God, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Keenan Allen. I'm just reading my top. Jordan Addison. And, folks, there's another one, Naylor. I have him in 20%. He is my injury handcuff for Jefferson and Addison and another one was Alovis in Cincinnati. I'm going to collect this week while everybody's asleep, just in case Higgins is hurt or whatever. I'm going to collect a few more. So I'm collecting $1 hollers while everybody's asleep. And Ray McCloud is another one. And some of these other ones I'm collecting, but I got Tillman, Dennis. I didn't realize until just now. 25. And boy, last week I could tell. I could tell that and Kelsey, man, those two got me 50 points. And you
Well,
could tell Kelsey's in 20 out of 41. He's in 50% of my leagues. Hawkinson is in 50%. Kittle, uh, a quarter. So Kelsey and Hawkinson are my number two, 1 and 2, and they're tied half my leagues. So if I can just get Hawkinson, I know last week 7 points. I'm hoping we can get close to median for
he
him
will.
next
He
couple of
will.
weeks. Yeah.
He he
Well,
was he was really light on snaps this week.
I
I've got
I
I
hadn't
got
even
another
checked
one.
on that.
I got
Yeah.
another $1 holler for you,
Okay. I
and it's
like
going to
Wanda.
surprise people
Okay. I like hollers.
because
Yeah.
because in the at the trade deadline,
Okay.
Pittsburgh Steelers
Yeah.
picked up another wide receiver, right? Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Mike Williams and George Pickens do basically the exact same thing. Okay,
Yes.
they're going to be getting those lollipop throws from Wilson. There's a wide receiver that is kind of like the like the old Sesame Street thing. One of these guys is not like the other.
Yeah.
Calvin Austin.
Dennis, he's in when I said I was getting four, he's one of them. And I've already collected him for $1 in
Oh
two or
yeah,
three other leagues.
yeah. I had been a buyer earlier.
Mhm.
He had some injury issues that slowed him down. He comes back off the bye week and he'll be plugged into a few of my lineups
Yep.
this week where I've had some
And
injuries.
folks, Green Bay's on Brooks and Wilson. I'm not sure who might win if Jacobs were to go down, but they're worth $1 this week.
Probably Brooks might be my
Well,
guess.
I'm collecting both,
Oh yeah,
Dennis, and
yeah,
I'll take them for $1.
yeah.
Now's the time to collect them.
Yeah, and this is the key to success on the waiver wires. It's not waiting until you see a spike week production like Mike Gesicki. It's being 2 weeks ahead of knowing who the next man up could be. You throw him on your roster. He sits at the end of the bench unless you have injuries that forces him into the lineup, and then you wait and see what he does. We did that with Cedric Tillman. We did that with Leggett. We did that with Quentin Johnson and Joshua Palmer at the beginning of the year this year. You make your targets based on opportunity, and you don't care if the guy produces nothing, then you move on and you find another dollar target to stash. And see, this is what people don't realize in fantasy football is the game is always evolving and changing, and it's always a case where you've got the next man up syndrome. And once that it's obvious who that next man up is, then he gets expensive. But if you can beat the masses to the pick, you're going to do well. All right. So Thursday night football, Professor.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. There are very few games that make me kind of question where it's going to go, but this is a game that you got to say is a must win game for Cincinnati.
Yeah. Here's our usual tablet here. We look at all our Vegas metrics, my defense against position, my efficiency. I will say that I haven't done my power rankings yet. We're recording this Wednesday morning instead of Wednesday afternoon, so messed up my mojo, Dennis. But anyway, uh,
I got called off the bench to actually do the afternoon
that's
drive today.
okay. Well, folks, if you want to hear Dennis in his real day job, it's WITY. You can hear him on the internet. I've actually listened on occasion just to kind of have a laugh. And Dennis's voice changes, folks, from his podcast voice, his in-person voice, and his radio voice. He's a master of voice changing in inflection and
Not supposed to
things.
tell people my
Yeah.
secret.
So, it's like I heard him at the expo. It's like, who is that? That sounds familiar. Oh, it's Dennis. He's using his inside voice. And anyway, but his radio voice sounds different. You sound serious and very studious. You sound
That's
like a professor on the radio, Dennis.
that's
Did you know
that's on
that?
the noon show, Professor.
Oh, so I hadn't heard your
So
afternoon
so we have to
frolic.
hear the afternoon because I'll loosen up with some music
Oh,
trivia and other things today.
so you go get a little bit more frolicsome. Okay.
I will have fun today.
Okay. But anyway, y'all can listen to him if you want. He'll call in and request Freebird. I'm sure he'll play you that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Maybe if I could do Freebird and Inagata Davida back to back, I could
Hey,
take a nice long break for dinner.
yeah, that would be good. Yeah, that extended. Yeah, that's right. Get you some corn dogs or
Oh,
something.
throw in Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald,
Oh,
and I'll
definitely.
I'll
Yeah,
have
that
that, or
kind
or,
of.
or a song by Meatloaf, and I'll
Yeah,
be all
that
set.
the wreck of the New Orleans Saints.
Ooh,
That's my ballad that I'm hearing this. Firing our coach and everything. Anyway,
oh
back to our
yes,
Thursday game. I
Thursday night
hate
game.
Thursday
Yeah.
games. I hate Germany games. I guess we'll be talking about
Oh
that.
yeah.
Like, what the hell? Now we're going to
Ugh.
Germany. We're going to all eat sausages and get drunk in our fantasy football. Come on. Anyway, Baltimore Cincinnati 53 points this morning, Dennis. Six
Yep.
point favorite Baltimore spanks Cincinnati. I don't know if that's true, but there it is. That's what Vegas thinks. I'm just Thursday. I don't gamble on Thursday with props, folks. I know, I guess for $2, I guess I could do something, but I'm so suspicious. We'll either get the best Thursday game we've had of the season or it will be sadness. Anything below 53 and people are going to claim it's sad. So I know what's going to happen on Twitter about two plays in. If it's Cincinnati gets the ball first, well, they're suck. Or that Thursday, bug got them. Whatever it's going to happen, about two plays in, Dennis, we're going to have, it's going to be bad. I could just see it now. Whatever happens, uh, Daps, both teams should be passing early and often. Burrow, it should be lighting up the wide receivers. The air yards should be blowing so much. It's a hurricane, Dennis. That's how much the air yards should be extended in this game, Dennis. The air yard data is just going to knock us over here,
Wow.
folks. Yeah. Rushing, eh, I think they'll rush just enough to open up the passing. So King Henry, I think they'll let him loose early. And then if Cincinnati stays close, then I think they'll pass more. But if Cincinnati doesn't stay close or Burrow's not on target, then I think Henry will shut the door on the fourth quarter. I think they'll grind them down. So even though it seems high flying, I think high flying until Baltimore gets a big lead, couple score lead, and then I think they'll throw the Henry, the human anchor in, and just put the pressure on Cincinnati. I think if I was playing a defense, I would play Baltimore because I think if Burrow gets behind, he'll get a little crazy. But
Oh,
if he can stay with them, then so it depends on what you think the outcome, the game script is. I think it says passing, and then Henry takes over rushing and wins the game for them. Baltimore and Cincinnati both improving. They both like home. Cincinnati hates away, Dennis, 38% less efficient. And my efficiency metrics is yards, points, game points over time. So Cincinnati's a little behind the eight ball there. And Away, they're going to try to rush more and pass less, and they're going to have to do the exact opposite of their home away tendency. Baltimore rushes and passes less at home. I think that's what's going to happen is they'll pass, and then Henry will shut the door down for them.
Very good analysis, Professor. So this game, like I said, it comes in and I'm looking at all the data. And one of the pieces of the puzzle that I've used this year when it's come to predicting the spreads, who I want versus the spread. Now, again, I don't care who wins the game. It's the spread that matters to me. And I've used the scaled efficiency data quite aggressively to get off some losers and onto some winners. And again, against the spread. So when I look at a spread in a game that I think is a must win for Cincinnati, because if they lose this game, we're talking 4-6. We're talking 6 losses already. That's danger of not making the playoffs. You look at a Baltimore defense that has been really good at forcing turnovers if they get a team behind the sticks. But if a team is able to move the ball consistently on them and not get themselves in 3rd and longs and 2nd and 12s, they've given up a lot of points. I like Cincinnati in this spot, not necessarily to win the game, but to make it a close game where this is going to come down to a final possession. So I'll take the 6 points in Cincinnati. I'm playing every single player that I can find to put in my lineups. Maybe not Deontay Johnson. I want to take a wait and see of how he is ready to go in this offense. And because Deontay's there, I'm probably not playing Rashad Bateman in my deeper dynasty leagues if I've got a better option. Because I think it's Zay Flowers. I think we're going to see Mark Andrews come back. He did not play a full complement of snaps last week.
I noticed that.
That was very curious. I don't understand.
Did you check those snaps too?
Yes, no injury.
What was going on?
It was just a game scripted thing that they were going heavy wide receivers, I guess. But
I'm sitting here looking at, he had 28 snaps the week before, 50.
50, yeah. So was it just a case that they were easing him yet last week because they weren't worried about losing the game and they knew they had a quick turnaround this week? Was it a load management thing like you see with running backs?
Yeah. And, Dennis, as I look at the snaps for Baltimore, and maybe I'll share that, and I will have the snaps stuff out. Dennis, here, let me stop the share and I'll pull up the snaps so we can look, and I'll have this out on our site later, probably, but you can see it tonight. Here it is, Dennis, 9-week snaps. The tight ends, take a look at it. It was weird. So really, week 8, Charlie only got 10. And so notice week 1, 8. So last week, week 8 was really strange. And last week, Charlie got 22. And notice when Charlie gets 22, Andrews doesn't do as well. When Charlie gets nothing, Andrews does pretty good. It's been really strange on that.
And look at the wide receivers too.
Look at Deontay. It's like everybody got a taste.
Deontay got a
taste.
Aguilar, Tylan Wallace. They even used Walker, for the first time all season. So it was really watered down.
Yeah.
But again, I look at that and I say, was this just really smart coaching? That they knew once they got the lead,
Hmm.
because they blew Denver out of they blew them out of the game.
Hmm.
So when they got the lead, did
They
they
didn't
just
need
throttle
Mark
back?
Andrews.
Did they
Don't need
throttle back?
Likely. Don't need
Yeah,
him. Put Charlie out there.
yeah. And look at Ricard getting 36 carries, so or 36 snaps. So they switched up
Yeah.
when they had the big lead. They throttled
The human
down.
anchor. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
throttled down on Henry. They throttled down on all of their players. Look at look at Zay Flowers, who had a fabulous game, but he only
It's
played 30
30.
snaps.
Bateman
Th-
outsnapped him.
This was load management for
And
this week.
so Dennis, I haven't done the studies yet to try to correlate the distribution of snaps with game scripts and
Yeah,
things that I
yeah.
hadn't had time to do that, folks. I'm just one ESPN. If you'll put me on freelance, well, I've got some questions, and that would be one is if I would love to see possibilities like if the game script is this, what do we expect? And
Yeah.
as you see, week 9 could have been, and so we've seen what that looks like. And if I look at Cincinnati, let's just see what they're up to. Chase Brown, 59. That was
Yeah.
crazy. So who's the next man up? If I'm
It's Khalil Herbert now.
Yeah,
But
because
he's been
is
on
that
the roster
because they
for
didn't like Trayvon Williams or
correct.
Milton?
Correct. And
So
Zach
they
Moss
were
is done for the
judging
season.
them.
Yep.
It wasn't that Khalil, you had to get him. It was more what we got ain't going to get it for us.
No, and they really had limited, they didn't have anybody on their practice squad with experience. It was a
Uh-huh.
brilliant trade for real football terms.
Uh-huh.
But if you think this is going to cut into Chase Brown's snaps, it's going to be not this week, but in weeks ahead,
Mm-hmm.
he might top off at 40. And we might see Herbert be in that Zach Moss role, being around 25 to 30, which we saw the last few weeks.
Look
But
at
here's
look at the wide receivers.
oh yeah,
So
and here I think that Higgins was held out
yeah, yeah.
because they knew they had the tough game coming up, and they were like, well, okay, well, we can either have him
No,
for week 9, or we can have him for week 10. We can't have him for both. What are we going to do?
we'll take week
And
10 because we
it,
got to
it,
beat
we
Baltimore.
got to beat Baltimore. But last week, they were able to. And again, you look at the competition; they're only playing the Raiders. They knew they could beat them without Higgins. Now they need Higgins, so Higgins will be back this week. So you're playing everybody. You're playing Chase. You're playing Higgins. Obviously, if you got Gesicki, you're playing Gesicki. But look at the tight ends. They're all splitting touches. They're all
Boy, that
splitting snaps. And Chase Brown is going to get one more big, heavy load week. He'll be up over 50. He'll be around 50
so
snaps.
if I look at this, I'm thinking Chase Brown props.
I would play it all day long because I think you're going to get a good number because Vegas is looking at that split backfield and they're expecting maybe it'll go back 2 days.
No, it won't. Yeah, they're
He's
not
been on
going
the
to have him.
roster. He's been on the
Yeah.
roster 2 days,
Yeah.
and he'll only get one day today to really practice. He's not going to know the playbook.
Yep.
So you got Chase Brown. You're in good shape this week.
Yep.
Chase, Higgins, both in the lineups. I'm not so big on Yosevich.
He's spiky.
Very spiky.
Dennis, he reminds me of the Lockett in Seattle with
Yeah,
having
yeah.
Metcalf as Chase, Higgins is JSN, and Levis or whatever, he's the Lockett. He's there if you need him or if one of the other big dogs is hurt.
And
You got a shot. So
and
that's how I would. But for $1, Dennis,
oh yeah,
he's worth having
yeah.
as an injury. He's an injury handcuff with a powerful backfield. I mean,
And he's
wide receivers.
and he's getting the snaps even when the other two guys are playing, and he's getting red zone snaps.
So
That's
you
the
have an
key.
opportunity to fall in the end zone, but
But
he's
but
spiky.
he's very spiky. So he's not a guy you want to rely on. But if you're in a
For a
deeper
dollar, and you'd have
Deeper
nothing else.
roster. Yeah. Yeah. But I think this is over the 53. I know it's a big number,
Yeah,
but I think this game is in the 60s. And
nice.
I've been better on my over unders than I've been.
So a Chase Brown taking the over
Oh yeah.
and taking the money line, is that your three-way plop for $2? Maybe I should go bet that $2 prop.
I'm not so sure I'd bet the money line
Okay,
on
you
this
don't
one.
think Baltimore wins?
But well, I'm no, I don't. I wouldn't play Baltimore or Cincinnati on the money line. I think
Okay,
the over under is where I would play.
okay.
I would take the points in Cincinnati if you forced me to make a decision in a pool setting, but I'm
Hmm.
not so sure I'm putting money on that either. All I'm putting money on is that
Hmm.
there's going to be lots of points scored. And because there's going to be lots of points scored, I might go with some of those touchdown
So
props.
take Henry,
Lamar
yeah,
Jackson gets
Henry,
in.
yeah,
Henry,
Jackson, Chase,
maybe Flowers,
Flowers. You could probably
definitely
do
Chase Brown.
yeah, you could
Yeah.
do a 4 touchdown parlay there. And might for $2 or $1, you might get you 10, $12 or so.
It would not shock me to see what, well, I expect 4 touchdowns minimum from each of these teams. I think it's going to be a high
Wow.
scoring game. Nobody's nobody's been able to stop Burrow unless they get to him on the pass rush, and they're not going to get to him if he doesn't get behind the sticks in an obvious passing down.
Yeah.
That's where Baltimore's success is sacking the quarterback. But if he gets that ball off quick throws.
Well, having Higgins gives them that
Oh yeah.
that
Yeah.
ability to do that.
Yeah.
He
So
can keep
that's
away from
yeah.
Baltimore's D by having Higgins.
Yeah. So I'll be totally honest. I don't have no clue who's going to win. I just think it's going to be a higher scoring game than you expect on a Thursday night. Usually we expect Thursday nights to be kind of yeah. When it comes to offense, we've seen some big explosive games.
Yep.
But if you look at the snap usage this week, both teams were playing last week against easier opponents,
Yep.
knowing they had the quick turnaround, and you saw it in the snap data. This is the load management thing that we see now in the 17 game NFL season with these short turnarounds. And that's where you could take advantage of this for fantasy football because you look at last week and you go, oh my God, some of these
Yeah,
guys, man, they were.
I need to, Dennis, let's put this down. We need to look at snap percentages, maybe between positions on Thursday games versus the rest,
Yes.
kind of
Yes.
as a big two pots to look at.
In
Just,
a rare situation where both teams coming into Thursday night
yeah,
had
or,
big blowouts
yeah,
the
or
week before.
something. Maybe you
Yeah.
could divide that would be an interesting question. So that's my question, folks. Notice I haven't figured out data and try to tell you that that's how it is. I just have a question.
But
And
some of our data professor has suggested that with these defensive matchups
yeah,
and two very evenly matched offenses, because
yeah,
right now, if you look at scoring in the league,
mhm,
the Bengals and the Ravens are both up there.
yeah,
You look at the quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Burrow are both having great seasons.
yeah. The efficiency data taps into some of that. And notice Cincinnati is 106, Dennis. Baltimore's
Yes.
88. That is here. Let's look overall at the league. Cincinnati's number 2.
Yep.
Baltimore is what, 7th?
Yep.
Of course, by the way, Detroit, Dennis, 131. They are so off scale.
They're in their
When
own
when
league.
you try to put data that's really not linear, folks, on a scale that's linear, it don't work. So what you have to do, you have to cheat. And when I say cheat, you have to, if you're going to visualize, you have to just, so I set Jacksonville at the 100. So I deliberately look at the raw efficiency numbers and I said, if I start with Detroit, it's going to make the rest of the league look so funky. It's like you can't compare the apples to the orange scale. That's what Detroit is. And somewhat, in other words, if Detroit wasn't there, I probably would have scaled Cincinnati to 100 and just showed a little bit more steepness. But having Detroit breaks the scale. I don't remember being that broken this time. And
Well,
Dennis,
look at the
yeah,
breakage to the bottom side of things as
yeah, look
well.
at Tennessee and Saints. They
Woo.
have just, they're the human anchors of the league. And so folks remember they'll try to do, show you some graphs and linear, and data is not that way a lot of the times in real life in biology, and it's not all linear and easy. It's not that, it's more complex. It's logarithmic. It's power scale. There's actually tests, Dennis, and things where you actually even test the data to ask the question, can you even do the stats with a pair? It's called parametric and non-parametric. And it's like two different directions, and they're different ways of looking because real world is not simple. It's more complex. And I'm telling you, fantasy football data is never simple graphs and charts like people want to say. I show you that with the caveat that this is a way to visualize these big differences, not to live and die. In other words, Cincinnati is not 25% less than Detroit or something. It's just Detroit is really up there. And then Cincinnati, Jacksonville, probably Pittsburgh and Vegas are probably another bucket. And Kansas City, it's kind of almost back to the tier system, which there is some truth to the tier system. And KC, Baltimore, and Buffalo are kind of in the next tier. That is a good way to look at it. You just can't try to judge it like, well, Buffalo is 85, therefore they're 15% less than Jacksonville. No, if they were playing each other, I wouldn't give Jacksonville a 15% edge at all. It's just a beginning way to look at it. It's a way to consider your thinking and just remember and to maybe look a little deeper. And that's where I think people get too much into. If you don't know how to do data and predictions, Dennis, you can get tricked. In other words, when you look at hurricanes, Dennis, I've seen these spaghetti
Oh,
models,
yeah.
Dennis.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
not one, they're not one stick. They're not
No,
one spear.
no.
Spaghetti models, there's 30 or 40. And it's like, okay, this is all these possibilities. And the spaghetti, the big cone, is representing these possibilities. And that is hard for us as humans because we want it to be simple, because it's our system one thinking is lazy, the fast and frugal.
Yes.
It's quick and easy, and we're lazy. Our system two, our Vulcan inside of us, it's hard to draw that out. Uses a lot of glucose, and there's actually fatigue. If it's called decision fatigue, Dennis, they've actually found out that they've actually done tests where they make people do a lot of decisions, and they'll give them some water, maybe some fake sugar water versus real sugar water. And there's some evidence that having glucose replenishes some of that glucose in your brain needs to make these decisions. So folks, when you about 12 beers under and you're drafting, folks, your brain chemistry is all muddled, and you wake up and, oh my God, did I draft that team? Yeah. So, folks, you celebrate with your champagne after you got that check in your pocket, Dennis. That's when you party. You don't party before. So, I just said a lot of good stuff, didn't I? Yeah.
That explains why my Scott Fishbowl team is doing so badly.
Yeah.
I had one beer with
Dennis,
everybody
quit messing with your brain
to
chemistry.
to be social, and that ended up being my worst team of the
Dennis,
year.
you buy for everybody else and you get the Shirley Temples. Everybody gets whiskey and you order the Shirley Temple Light.
That would have been a
That's how
smart
you
way to
beat
go.
your local league at the bar.
But
Drink up, boys,
we
early and
we
often.
we did stay stone sober at the draft night out, and
Oh, we did.
we are having a season. But how about our season at draft night out? Could you believe the end of that game Monday night
Boy,
football?
wasn't that sweet?
It was Hopkins against Kelsey at the end. Of course, we had Mayfield also in our starting lineup, and that certainly helped.
Yeah.
But at the end of the game, Professor, I was
Yeah.
live tweeting in the chat room
Yeah.
with the guy that we were playing.
Oh my goodness.
The lead went back and forth on 3 consecutive plays.
Is he still your friend?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
he was like pumped up about it. He's like, "Oh, we're gonna meet each other in the finals this year. There's no doubt."
Yeah.
But that was the attitude. It wasn't this, "Oh, woe
Good.
is
Then
me." It
yeah.
was
That's great.
he was a sensible guy because
Good.
he understands the chaos that can
That
happen.
is fantasy
And,
football.
and that is fantasy football when you're just looking at one game like that. But what a
Yeah.
crazy turn of events. I love the tier system of looking at players. In fact, on my consensus of weekly values article this week,
Yep.
I've added the tiers.
Yeah. Well,
And
you know, in your articles that's already up, you put elites and super elites and
yes,
adequate and
yep.
lost your game last week. And I like that versus trying to tell me, 88 versus 89 and try to make a claim about it. And
No,
you can't do it that way.
no, and this week I'm introducing tiers in this article for the first time. And
Good.
remember, at the beginning of the season last year, I said you want one of the top 4 quarterbacks, right?
Yes.
Before this season, what did I say? You could probably add 2 more to that group.
Yes.
You know how many quarterbacks we have in the top 2 tiers this year using my consensus rankings?
5 or 6.
6, exactly. We have 4 in the top tier and then 2 in a very close behind them second tier. And then we have a clear break to the next group of 4 and another clear break to the next of 2. So there is a definite tier advantage between the top 2 tiers. You actually have 2 more tiers before you get to the 12th place and final starter in a 12-team league. So once again, the data was right, anticipating that we would have 2 additional
Dennis,
guys.
The data wasn't right. Your analysis of the data.
The analysis was right, but again,
but the students will say the data says. I said, no, the data doesn't say.
Now the
Your
data gives you a
says,
clue.
Dennis, it's a thing I have. The students will write and they'll say the data says. The data doesn't say anything. You look at. So just I don't know. You tweak my Professor Gene there. And that's why.
And if you really
but Dennis, you shorten. And here's the thing: you undercut your analysis acumen because that's why we're a good team, because you do look at the data and your analysis is good. It's not 100%, but between the two of us, we stumble on and get a lot right because we've had that practice. A lot of this, I think, Dennis, if we ever were to coach people in fantasy, first they'd have to realize this is a long process. I've been doing this since 1977, right? And since you were in college, same thing. We started that, and probably even in high school with math and things. And you start down that road, and fantasy football analysis is not something you pick up quickly. And that's why people get mad. Oh, this is all random. It's random because you don't understand that journey. And so you just spike, you have spiky weeks and you think nothing makes sense. And to me, it makes a lot more sense than not a lot of the times.
Well, in sixth grade, I discovered that when you looked at baseball stats, that I didn't worry about batting average. Okay, I didn't worry about home runs and RBIs. I looked at slugging percentage combined with on base percentage. Then I divided that by the number of at bats to come up with a number that I could compare batters to each other. In reality, that's basically OPS in a nutshell. But I narrowed OPS to per instead of per snap like we do in football points now with your efficiency. I did it to per at bat in baseball long before fantasy baseball existed. But I wanted to understand comparing two players to each other when I realized that batting averages didn't tell me anything. So I was ahead of my time in looking at baseball stats. So it really shouldn't need, because now OPS is the thing, and it has been for the last 25 years. Well, I was doing that in 1970. So, long before people were thinking OPS. So looking at my MVP index and my weekly values and combining the metrics, looking at our 6 combined metrics that we used preseason for drafts, that's where that was born when I was in 6th grade, because my math teacher said, you just are too lazy to do your homework. I'm going to teach you math using something that you enjoy, which is baseball stats. Here you go. And challenged me to come up with a new way of looking at baseball stats using mathematics, using algebra. And that's what I came up with. And now, 20 years after the fact, it became the thing that everybody in fantasy baseball lives and dies by now. And your efficiency data, where you look at per snap, points per snap, is similar to how I looked at OPS per snap back in the 6th grade. This is nothing new. We've been playing with numbers ever since the first time we looked at sports stats or the first time we looked at a horse racing form. It's just applying that scientific logic to fantasy football.
I like that. That was a good story. I feel smarter now for a second until I actually
So,
look at the data and get confused some more.
yeah, so in other words, I've always been a stataholic.
Yeah.
That's my
Mm.
problem. So
Yeah.
head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out all of the professor's data coming soon. By the time this podcast is up and you're listening to it, the data will be there at the
Yeah.
scienceoffantasyfootball.com. Check out my articles to see who's hot, who's not, who's rising, who's fallen. All of that information will be up there shortly as well. And head on back here Saturday morning for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks. Woo woo. That was good, Dennis.
I never thought about telling that story.
I like that story. That's good. We're still recording, so this is kind of
Yes.
after the show. Just kind of, I thought we did good. This morning thing was good. That's why I always think our Saturday mornings are kind of, I don't know. I feel a lot more awake than I do in the afternoon. I'm tired and old in the afternoon. I'm still young and fresh in the morning here. So
That's
anyway,
probably a good
that was
strategy.
good stuff. Yeah,
Although even though we're recording right now,
yeah,
I gotta remember it, or I gotta ask now because I'll forget it
uh,
in 5 minutes.
yeah.
So can we record Friday evening though this week, because I have to be butler on Saturday morning
What?
to yes, my wife's having her annual Christmas craft party,
Oh my goodness.
and I'm Jeeves for the
Oh my
event. So
goodness,
I
Dennis.
I do
Dennis, look, don't act up and play the fool because your wife will be embarrassed by your funny antics and your little
She
hats and
actually
your jokes.
she
And
she actually not only is encouraging me to be a fool, but she got me like a waiter's apron to wear, a
oh
holiday
my goodness,
apron that I
you
wear,
need to
and I
do your
wear
best Basil Fawlty. You need to do your John Cleese.
and I make up what I am told is a
Yeah,
very, very tasty batch of
yeah.
mimosas.
Oh,
And
good.
I'm very generous pouring the
Okay.
mimosas
Oh,
for the
good.
ladies all morning.
Okay.
And
Well,
we, of
do not
course,
do not set your lineup after y'all drinking. Okay. Tell your ladies fantasy football team, do not. Your brain chemistry is all messed up with the mimosas. So
that's
tell them the
good
professor,
advice.
yeah, tell them the professor's advice there. Do not alter your brain chemistry and try to set your lineups because Jameis Winston is on bye this week and Tillman is too.
Oh,
I know you
yeah.
want to play them and double collect, but you can't this week. You have to wait.
And Jameis Winston, while I made fun of him a little bit in that comparison to drop Mahomes, pick up Winston, told you that was a disaster. Don't ever do it. Winston's not a bad plug and play starting next week if you need him.
Well, and
When
you know,
he's playing a
and here's the after the show. Here's my quandary. I have been. I told you I'm worried about Aaron Rodgers. If he loses another game, are they going to, are they when are they going to fold the tent and go home? Jets, just like the Cowboys. I feel like Dak is not coming back after IR if he goes. Dennis, I think they'll be so far down. Jerry Jones is going to be like, no, I'm not risking this. So I feel like I've got these guys around. And if things, in other words, if the Jets keep winning and say Cooper Rush wins two or three of the next four games,
oh yeah.
you, so I've got this quandary in, say, maybe 10 of my leagues. What do I do? Do I drop Dak? And
Oh,
no, what do you
I
think?
don't know. I am
If he's,
I
are you telling me in what 5 games they're going to pull him back? If Cooper Rush loses the next four,
yeah.
you see the quandary. Is
That's
it
the
time to?
quandary. Yeah, and
Because the playoffs are coming.
I have a similar problem where I'm going to have to take a hard look at that in FPPC
But
because I
see,
have one.
that's where I'm at. But I've got
Yeah,
Rodgers on some teams. So my solution has been taking some of my marginal wide receivers, some of these,
yeah,
deep,
yeah.
and taking a third quarterback. And Winston has been one, and Danny Dimes is out there.
Yep.
Russell
Oh,
Wilson is out there.
I like Danny Jones in fake football.
Well,
He he
I,
gets
I'm
enough rushing to
so
give you
do I
some
drop
floor.
Dak or Rodgers and pick him up, or do I try to hold those? And in other words, do I ride with two, or do I keep those potential duds before the playoffs even start?
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
I don't know what to do with Dak is my big problem right now.
yeah, and that's a quandary because normally you when you look at a situation, you can go ahead and look at it and say, okay, what would a normal team do in a situation like this? The problem is that we never see normal behavior
From Jerry Jones. No.
from Jerry Jones.
And the
So,
Jets are going to be forced. I mean, they just got rid of their coach. I mean, that owner, he's liable to do anything. Aaron Rodgers liable to go back to
yes.
the damn pyramids and meditate for another year. I mean, you don't
Yeah,
know
so
what he's going to do.
no, so that's the quandary because right now, the way it is currently sitting with the Cowboys, and let's assume, like you say, they lose two games here in the next five.
Yeah.
So they would be
And CeeDee Lamb
five.
may not be back for this week.
Yep, they'd be like 5-7. Okay,
Is Jerry
after
Jones
12
going to,
games.
yeah, what's going to,
were, 5-8
Yeah.
after 13.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, remember the last qualified wild card team right now
Yeah.
is the Packers at 6-3.
Yeah.
It's not like they're chasing a 500 team.
No.
And right now, they have 5 teams ahead of them, including the Rams, who are cooking on offense, and their defense is getting better. The 49ers and the Buccaneers and the Seahawks, not to mention the Bears, who are at 4-4 as well. But that's 5 teams ahead of you to battle for that last playoff spot. And right now, both of the top teams in your division only have 2 losses. So all of a sudden you get to 8 losses. You're going to have to hope that everybody else in your division plays 500 or worse ball while Dak is out for the next 5 weeks. I think they're cooked. The only reason I'm kind of quasi hanging on to Dak in that one league is I'm looking at it going, is he going to be better? If he does come back, if the Cowboys want to have this last hurrah and he's ready to come back in 4 weeks instead of 5 or 6, do they do the absolute dumb thing just to keep the fans from revolting? I don't know.
You
It's
see,
it's
Dennis, that
Dallas.
that
I
that's
can't
what
figure.
I mean, I've
Yeah,
got between now and 9 o'clock
yeah, yeah.
tonight
I'm
to and like I said, I've got a similar issue with Aaron. I feel like I'm sitting on a keg of dynamite that could go
ooh,
off at any time. And I just
yes.
so the worst case scenario is I keep them and try to go get 2 quarterbacks. So I
So
carry him three.
yeah. So my dilemma right now with my DAC team,
Yeah.
I'm in first place. The
Wow.
the good news, the good news is my other quarterback is Justin Herbert, who's been on a nice little roll. The
Yep.
bad news is he plays Tennessee this week.
Bad. Yeah.
So I'm looking at all of this and I'm going, do I need to pick up another quarterback? I've got Tim Patrick sitting at the bottom of my wide receiver list who's
I
done nothing.
if I was keeping Dak, I'd go get a second quarterback.
So
See,
I'll
that's what
prop,
that's
yeah,
how, but I'm to the
yes,
point now, I just don't know if I want to carry. I don't mind carrying 3 quarterbacks if I'm in a bind where I'm rotating them in and out. They're actually
yes,
all, but
yes,
now I've got only two. I'm carrying three, but I'm only got two usable pieces. I just don't know, Dennis. And it may be record specific. Remember, we're points, and
yes.
a week where you score, 100 and say 70 or 80 in the FFPC, that can move
Oh,
you from sixth to second.
way up.
I,
Yes,
I had a
yes.
team, I was seventh. I scored like 107. I mean, I had Winston Tillman. I mean, it just everything, Kelsey, it all worked. Everything worked. Henry, everything worked. And I'm now second again. I was seventh and now I'm second.
Well,
That's a big jump.
last week, here's how tight it is, and that was tight in that league.
Yep.
After the early games on Sunday, I was in fourth place. I had Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, and I had Kelsey, and I started Herbert instead of Dak last week. And I had Chuba Hubbard, and I had Ray Davis in my lineup because I was desperate. I went from fourth to first in 1 week. So it's crazy how quick you can go when you're not playing matchups. And my wide receivers right now, AJ Brown, who is he going to play this week? Is he going to miss a game?
Makes
Keenan
me
Allen,
tired. Yeah.
yep,
Makes me
Keenan
tired.
Allen, who I don't know what to do with Keenan Allen half the time. Wandale Robinson, Ray McLeod, and Mike Wilson. So I'm probably getting rid of Patrick to trade in for another quarterback. But man, it has been one of those years where if I would, when I looked at the draft of all my FPPC, and I got 5 redraft teams, if I would have looked at those 5 teams and said, which team is least likely to make the playoffs, that would have been my team, and it's in first place.
Yeah.
Because I've been incredibly efficient in picking the right guys on a week-to-week basis. And that, that's some of that is luck. You got a guy injured, and all of a sudden you plug in Ray Davis and he goes off.
Yeah.
On limited snaps. A 62-yard run will do wonders for your 62-yard pass.
And he had limited snaps. I've put him in last week myself in a couple.
That was a 13-point play.
Happy. Yeah, it just all worked for me in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's understanding the data. It's understanding the guys that have the upside on any given week. But that's the luck side of fantasy football. So, if he had not had that play, that was 13 points of his 17. So what's the
probability that Dak comes back? Just right now?
I'd have to
50,
put it
50? 40, 40,
maybe
60?
40, 60. Again, if it was a normal coach and owner situation.
But it's not. It's crazy.
It would be like Justin Herbert last year, where management said, we're shutting him down.
Yep.
After it got to a point, we're shutting him down. And that was not just injury based. It was, we don't want to hurt him anymore. If they had been,
would they risk Dak's health anymore to try to shoot, to get, to stumble in the last place, the last ticket to the ride, to the dance?
And see, that would be the absolute Cowboys thing to do.
Oh, it would
because instead of because a first round exit from the playoffs, and then all of a sudden you're in a drafting position where you can't get anybody that's going to really impact your team, huge, like the top 6 to 8 picks in every draft.
Yeah.
If you use them right, that's an impact player that can change your whole trajectory. Look at what Detroit did with all that draft capital. Penei Sewell, even the lineman that they got turned out to be the best lineman in a long time. Yeah. But Jamar Gibbs, all these guys that they just grabbed on both offense and defense, they are loaded now. And that doesn't happen if you play to mediocrity. The fact that they were so bad gave them an opportunity to get so good in a hurry. And, that's the difference between a smart team that realizes, okay, like fans might not be happy, but we're playing for top 5 draft pick this year.
I've got some decisions to make on Dak.
Yeah, it'll be a team. It would be a team by team specific thing for me.
Yeah, I know.
Who's available? Who do I have to drop?
I want the lazy decision. I don't want to have to think, Dennis.
You've
caught me. I'm actually going to have to dig deep, and I'm sitting there. I did my initial waivers last night. The kicker from Minnesota, I have to remember, because he's on IR now. I've been using him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, I'm swinging off Cincinnati's defense tonight. So I have to get rid of them. That was a good play last week. They got us 12 points. That was good.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, we were all so close on our dynasty team. Yeah. That was just the luck of the draw. That's, think about one more catch with somewhere in our crew.
That was the lack of playing upside, because I knew that Madison wasn't going to have a good week, but I was worried about Bucky Irving not playing on Monday night. Had we played Bucky Irving, we would have had the win.
Well, so Dennis, what do you do?
You got to play for the upside in a league like that. You cannot play defensive. You cannot worry about the bad stuff. That's the case of Monday Night Football catching me. I have not managed that team well this year. I'll be the first to admit it.
Well, we're
Getting rid
still
of,
in the running for the
we're
playoffs, so
still going to make the playoffs, but it has not been on my, if I were to give myself a grade for league management this year, it would be
yeah,
a C plus. Last year, I was a B plus, A minus. I took that team and I turned it into a playoff contender, and we finished third. So
yep,
we did okay. This year, we're gonna need to get lucky in the playoffs. We're gonna need to get either CJ Stroud or Goff hot at the end of the year,
yep,
and we're gonna need our wide receivers to stay healthy. We've got guys beat up now,
yep,
but if we get the breaks we need, I think we're positioned okay to make a splash in the playoffs. We just got to get there.
yep,
And I think
yeah,
we'll be okay. But this has been a poorly managed league by me this year. Should have played Bucky Irving. I knew that the worst case was Madison's like a 5 or 6 point guy, and he didn't even get to that.
yeah,
So I should have taken and rolled the dice on Irving. Now, Irving didn't have a big game either, but he did better. And
yeah,
that would have been the difference for winning and losing last week. But,
yeah,
I'm probably always going to be a little tougher on myself when it comes to managing. Um, but that was a mistake that I made. The only good thing is I was right to put Hawkinson in ahead of Ertz, and Schultz didn't like either of their matchups this week.
yeah,
Wide receivers were the only healthy ones we had.
yeah. No, I like
um,
Hawkinson over Schultz.
yeah,
Dennis, it's just think of look at Houston and how they've dealt with issues with wide receivers, and look at Tampa Bay
yeah,
versus the tight
yep,
end. Completely two different strategies. Otten versus Schultz, how the coaching and the system has rewarded tight ends and not. Completely different,
yeah.
polar opposites on how that's worked.
And this week in that league, I'm putting Goff in ahead of Stroud, even though Stroud's at home against Detroit.
Here's what I'll say about Goff, Dennis. Their efficiency's gone up. Their home away metrics have changed. Dennis, the
Yes,
last couple weeks, let's see if I've got all the DAPs done. Let's see. I can show you real quick. Let's go to Detroit. I don't even know what game it is. Let's see, Detroit. I'll show you the DAPs. I mean the Detroit. Yeah, Houston. So uh look at Detroit. They're
oh,
0.8, which is biased to the away more than the home. They
isn't
have
that crazy?
completely flipped their identity. But look at their efficiency, off the charts.
Unbelievable.
And
Yeah,
look at the away. This says they're going to use Gibbs and Montgomery 20% more activity. So I do say the passing goes down in a way, but the DAPs say they should. In other words, the DAPs from Houston are saying exactly opposite what they've been doing in away games.
interesting.
So just be aware that their favor for passing is favored, even though their tendency. And who's your other choice?
It would either be Goff or Stroud. So it's in the
Oh,
same
oh, well, there
game.
you go. So Stroud being at home, it's all about passing. So that's a tough matchup then, Dennis.
Yeah, I'm leaning
Wow.
because of the DAP.
Wow.
I'm leaning to the Detroit offense being a little bit more explosive
But
than Stroud.
Houston is mid pack efficiency,
Yeah,
Dennis.
yeah, it's been a
They're
bad year.
yeah. And they actually do like away more than home. They actually are better away than they are at home. So
Interesting.
there's efficiency says Detroit. DAPS seem to imply Detroit.
That's the way I think we'll go, and I'm hoping that Higgins is healthy for Thursday night. I'm hoping that CeeDee Lamb plays this weekend. If not,
Uh,
we'll sub Waddle in
if
for him.
see
But
here's and I wish I could know before waivers. If they horse
oh,
CD Lamb in, that tells me that they would horse Dak in if there was a small chance to get to the playoffs. That would tip the
yeah,
hand.
yeah,
If they hold Lamb out this week, I think they would not play Dak. I wish I knew that
yeah,
information before. You see what I'm thinking? They would tip their hand.
yeah.
So
And I think
that would
that's absolutely correct.
if they make Lamb go out there, then they've convinced everybody. If we've got a 1% shot, we're all in on playoffs this year. We don't care. Health be damned. And so I would save Dak. If Lamb is not going to play, I would probably get rid of Dak as the rule. Not, it's going to be team by team, as you say, folks. But that would move me kind of off dead center. That would tip their hand in my head.
That'll be definitely telegraphing their move
I think
on
it
what they
will.
plan to
I
do.
think it's going
Yeah.
to. I'm going to be quite interested to see, but I think their coach, he don't have a choice. He's got to try to argue to play them if you got them. We got to go for this because I think he won't be there next year.
And the one benefit that we do have this week
Yeah.
is CeeDee Lamb's game
Mm-hmm.
is before our Monday night game with Waddle. So
Yes, yes. So
we,
you could play. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. You could
we'll,
flip
we'll,
one.
yeah, we'll play.
Waddle could luck in to another touchdown.
So if we're right about the Higgins missing the game last week as a load management thing and they fire him up on Thursday night,
Yeah.
we should be in fine shape with our dynasty team.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And I'm trying to find Miami. Here's Miami. The DAPs are favorable for Waddle. It's above average.
Good.
The Rams are going to have to, and Miami's been improving recently, Dennis. But Miami doesn't like away games. They like
Ooh,
home better. So, but they are
yeah.
improving the last 3 weeks. So, well, you know why they're improving. Tua's back. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think folks are getting an insight on how we use DAP. Notice we haven't like, okay, we're 100% this way. It's just, yeah, it's moving the needle. I mean, it's like a scale, right? The old fashioned, you put a little bit over here and it's tips, and then you put a little, that's thinking. That's using a deeper thinking. That's your system to Vulcan Spock brain that costs you lots of glucose and lots of time and effort to try to make these decisions. And you know what? It can change immediately after we get off with each other. There's some injury could happen or something crazy, and that would, shift it back.
Yeah, that's the thing is there's always news, the
Yeah.
next piece of news, but you cannot be a slave to the
Nope.
last piece of news.
No, you can't.
You have to factor that in as if
Yeah.
it's the first piece of news for the week. And that's the tough part. And
It's a
I
personal
always,
thing.
yeah, and I always, explain to people that meteorology is a real science.
Yeah.
Okay. Weather forecasting is an art. Data analysis in fantasy football is a science. Posting your lineup, making the right decisions, that's a forecast. That's an art. Some people are going to be really good at the science part of it. I knew a lot of brilliant meteorologists who were absolute awful forecasters. Similarly, we see in fantasy football a lot of people who really understand the data, but make the mistake that if player A is rated 85 and player B is rated 83, that player A is always the player. Where it's always a little more subtle than that. You have to factor in game script if you can figure it out. You have to put in the defense. I like to use the efficiency data that you have devised. I find that very useful, and it makes sense that it would be useful, because if a player is efficient at scoring, he's going to be good at fantasy football. That's very data driven. But again, a 92 and a 91 doesn't make the decision for you.
No, it doesn't.
A 92 and a 40, that's
hips
a little
to
more,
hand. Yeah.
that's more clear cut. So,
Yeah.
but that's what we need to work on with people, is to understand that is also part of the scientific method. Part of the scientific method is knowing how to make data your friend.
Yeah.
And a useful tool, not just a slave to the data. And that's something we learned both in horse racing, because a 103 versus a 102 in Beyer didn't mean anything.
No.
A 103, 101, and 70 in Beyer, all of a sudden I've got a clue who my
and
top
of course, overlay odds on top of that, right? Overlay ADP on top of that. Then if they're the same, but it's second round versus sixth round, oh, well, that makes it for me,
Yes. And that's why we ended up doing so well in that draft night out league.
We did. We made that our bitch. We just spanked that value, and everybody's, eating those, all that bar food and swilling beer and carrying on and rah, rah, rah. And we were just riding that value wave and anticipating chaos. The little devil, the chaos devil on our shoulders were whispering, those wide receivers and running backs saying, do this, do that. We made chaos our friend. They just didn't know it yet.
Although next season, after this performance.
Yeah, they're going to be
okay.
They're going to be looking, their eyes are going to be on stalks looking at your data sheet.
But that's why we're going to have a second data sheet.
Well, you got to have a data sheet to read the data sheet, right? We need to bring those old 3D glasses, the blue and the red, and put them on and look around, watch everybody's faces.
We'll have our phony data sheet.
Yeah, we'll have the phony data sheet.
That will be easy
big letters, big letters.
And the real data sheet will be like,
the secret, on a grain of rice. We'll have to take these guys' glasses in the icon and read the little writing on the rice grain. We'll have. Actually, we need to get some of those old fake 3D glasses and say, here's our data sheet, and we've coded it so y'all can't figure it out. What would Tip do? Would Tip have a fit if we pulled that out? And our data sheet was all in green or red, and we put those glasses on.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
we could have some yucks.
But here's the fun thing, Professor.
Yeah.
We were the ones getting some of the chuckles for some of our picks, and now all of a sudden people are looking at that going, those guys knew what the hell they were doing. So we made a lot of points with some people that
they were paying attention.
They think they're smart in fantasy football. They're getting a little lesson that the professor and old D Mike know a little stuff too.
You got to make chaos your bitch, and you just I'm sorry, that's our shirt. That's what we need, Dennis. Making chaos our bitch. Science of fantasy football.
Oh, I love it.
We need to make that shirt. We'll give it out to our friends. We'll get Greg Kellogg to wear our shirt.
I love it.
Okay, man, I'm going to stop our recording here. We've said enough to get ourselves in trouble here. We love you, Tip and Greg and the whole gang.